We say good morning if you're watching on Peacock, our streaming partner, or listening on our great radio affiliates around the country. The other news being finalized this morning, the Steelers dumped wide receiver George Pickens to the Cowboys for draft picks. And I'm not surprised. I think that there was a lot of chatter leading up to the draft that they were trying to do this or they might do this. And then I thought, are they going to draft a wide receiver? Which they didn't. And then George Pickens goes to the Cowboys. You look at the Pittsburgh side of this and you go, what's this mean for Aaron Rodgers? If anything, he's going to say, well, they got DK Metcalf and a couple of guys that I'm not familiar with. Got a pretty good tight end. Got rid of Najee Harris. Maybe it's Mason Rudolph's team. But this guy would know better than I. It's Gerry Dulac joining us again. Steelers coverage with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and the Steelers Radio Network. How surprised were you that this move took place?
Well, I wasn't shocked because I knew they were going to move on him at some point, Dan. They were never going to give George Pickens a second contract. That was never going to happen. And I never thought they would just let him walk. When they didn't take a receiver, I thought they were content to go into the season with a double-barreled receiving room with DK Metcalf and George Pickens. But a coach told me this a long time ago, Dan, and it's still true. When the production outweighs the aggravation, you keep them. When the aggravation outweighs the production, you get rid of them. And that's what happens with George Pickens. They just thought that, his teammates, it was a problem in the locker room. It became a problem with Mike Tomlin. It wasn't just his on-field temperament and behavior. Repeated violations off the field, late for meetings, skipping meetings, late to games. It was just on. And it just got to the point where they weren't, especially after they traded for DK Metcalf, they just weren't going to tolerate it anymore, Dan.
What are the Cowboys getting?
They're getting both a problem and problematic receiver. There's no question he is a big play guy. But, I severely doubt that his on-field temperament is going to change. They're going to deal with a guy who's, is he all of a sudden going to become Mr. Discipline? I doubt it. I don't mean to pick on the guy. I only know what they saw and what we saw for 3 years with the Steelers. So there's no question about his talent level. But sometimes it's about more than just talent level in the NFL.
This move impact Aaron Rodgers' decision?
I don't think so. They don't think so. From their end, it doesn't have any impact at all on whether he signs with the team. I will say this, Dan, and of course, this was certainly no motivation for making the deal, but Aaron Rodgers didn't get to where he is as a future Hall of Famer by being an undisciplined, fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants quarterback, which is kind of the description you can apply to George Pickens. I think Aaron Rodgers is a very detailed quarterback, and I don't think his on-the-field relationship with George Pickens, who is anything but that, would mesh very well. So, I don't want to say it might be a blessing, an enticement for Aaron Rodgers to come. I don't think that at all, but I don't know that it would have been a good mix here anyhow.
Any news on the Aaron Rodgers front?
I wish I could tell you some, Dan. I mean, I check all the time, and as I've told you before, he told them up front he's going to take his time. They are willing to do that. They are still willing to do that. Mini camp is in, OTAs. The rookies are in this weekend, and OTAs start 2 weeks after that. So there's still time. And then, of course, you get into the mini camp, which is I gauge everything about the U.S. Open coming to Oakmont the 12th through the 15th, which is where mini camp is. So, there's still time for him to come.
Is there a plan B?
Yeah, you touched on it, Mason Rodgers. But I think even if that is the case, Dan, they will go out and sign some other veteran quarterback. I really don't think they are going to rely on a sixth-round pick, even though I like Will Howard in that spot. I don't think they're really going to rely on a rookie being a backup. Their history has always been to have two quarterbacks with NFL starting experience on their roster. And even though some of those have been picked over, that's one of the downsides of this Aaron Rodgers delay. I still believe they will try to sign some veteran quarterback to come in and be the number 2 behind Mason Rudolph if Aaron Rodgers falls through. But they firmly believe, Dan, that he is coming.
But if you look at where they are, talent level, are they the third best team in their division? Would you put, obviously, Baltimore, would you put Cincinnati above them?
Well, Dan, last year, after acquiring Russell Wilson and Patrick Queen and Deshaun Elliott and the moves they made, they were a 9-win team the year before. I automatically thought they were a better team. Based on their offseason, I thought they were a 10-win team. I don't right now think they are a better team than last year. So I don't know if that means it's 10 wins, 11 wins, 9 wins, or 8 wins. I don't think they're an 8-win team. Mike Tomlin's history has shown that they are just not a sub 500 team. But, the Bengals, as long as they have that quarterback and their receivers, their defense is very suspect. Steelers finished second last year. I don't think they're the best in the division by any stretch. So it might be a coin flip how it goes with the Bengals, depending on Joe Burrow's health. If he stays healthy, they're going to be tough. We saw that at the end of the year.
Steelers going to pony up for T.J. Watt?
Yeah, I think so, Dan. You go back in their history. I can't think of one player, one of their star players, basically in their prime, that they have ever let walk. I can't think of one. I go back to Franco Harris, which was toward the end of his career, and Dan Rooney quietly admitted after that it was the biggest professional mistake he ever made. He should have just signed Franco for everything he meant to the franchise. TJ Watt doesn't want to leave, and they don't want him to leave, so I expect that to happen.
I'll leave you with this. With Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin's not afraid to bring in guys who are suspect, headaches. If you look at Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Chase Claypool, they've gone through a lot of wide receivers, it feels like. They can't, and then they don't draft one when they need to draft one. Do they get enough do the Steelers get criticized locally for the kind of the randomness of some of these players that they bring in?
I don't think there's any question they get criticized locally for it, Dan. And that is one of, to me, I don't want to sit here and call it a Mike Tomlin fault, but Mike Tomlin believes that he can, work through these guys and kind of, get them onto the Steeler way, and you roll the dice with some of those guys. And, you look back, you look at Juju Smith-Schuster when he came in, and he's not nearly the problem that some of the other guys were. But you mentioned Chase Claypool, Antonio Brown, and they're still sensitive to everything that happened with Antonio Brown. And that's why they knew they weren't going to give George Pickens a second contract, because if he was acting this way without the big money, what do you think he was going to do once he got the big money? So, yeah, I think I think the people here are very much aware of it. And I think you pointing it up shows that maybe nationally some people are becoming a little bit more aware of it as well.
I don't know why I always go back to this play. When Antonio Brown got concussed by Vontaze Burfict, it felt like his personality changed. Now, you being around the team on a daily basis, but he went from being this great story. He was on the path to be a Hall of Famer. And I don't know if you can pinpoint that concussion that changed Antonio Brown.
Dan, that kind of theory has been advanced. I have been told, medically that wasn't the case.
Okay.
The Steelers believe that the money changed Antonio Brown. But whatever it was, that sense of entitlement reached a point. They traded him for a 5th-round pick. So people think like they're getting shortchanged for a 3rd-round pick for George Pickens. They are not. I think they're a little spoiled by the fact that they got a 2nd-round pick from for Chase Claypool from the desperate Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this or not, Dan. For 5 years, I did a weekly radio show with Antonio Brown. And I did. I liked the kid. I did. But you saw him later, the last couple years, change, and his insubordination that last year with the Steelers, from his teammates to his coaches to the general manager to the team owner, was unlike anything I've ever seen happen in the Steeler family. And so that's why they had to move on from him.
Great stuff. We'll be in touch this summer. Thank you, Gerry.
All right, Dan, you got it, man.
All right. Covering the Steelers for decades. Gerry Dulac, for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Steelers Radio Network.